Good night. Allow me to draw you into a land of paradoxes, where the laws of logic intertwine in curious ways with the soothing embrace of sleep. Leave all your worries at the door and simply listen. Level 1, the Barber Paradox. Imagine a small, sleepy town nestled in the heart of the mountains. In this secluded place lives only one barber, a quiet, taciturn man with calloused hands and a trusty razor. He strictly adheres to one rule. He shaves only those men in town who do not shave themselves, and no one else. He performs his work diligently, visiting the homes of residents who need his service each morning before sunrise. His movements are honed by years of practice, and his face maintains a calm expression. But here lies the paradox. Like an enchanted snake coiled at the very essence of this simple order, does the barber shave himself? Consider this for a moment. If he shaves himself, then, by definition, he is shaving someone who shaves himself. But his rule, etched in the stone of local tradition, states that he shaves exclusively those who do not shave themselves. This is a blatant contradiction, a crack in the very fabric of logic. On the other hand, if he does not shave himself, then he undoubtedly falls into the category of men who do not shave themselves. And that means he is obliged to shave himself, because that is his job. And again, an irreconcilable contradiction, like an echo reverberating many times in an empty hall. Whichever path your mind chooses, it will inevitably lead you to a logical dead end. It's like an endless staircase rising into the heavens, which is impossible to climb or descend, a tormenting exercise for the consciousness. Release the futile attempts to resolve this ingenious knot. Allow it to slowly dissolve into the silent stillness of the night, like a foam dissipating under the rays of the rising sun. Level 2, the Liar Paradox. This paradox, like an ancient sphinx, has stood guard at the gates of reason for millennia, posing its eternal question. It exists in many guises and forms, but the simplest and most disarming formulation sounds like this: I am lying now. Imagine for a moment that I, a quiet voice in the night, utter these 3 fateful words. What do they mean? If what I am saying is true, then that inevitably means that I am lying. But then the very statement, I am lying now, is false, nothing more than an empty sound. An irresolvable conflict arises, like 2 trains rushing towards each other on the same track. But if what I am saying is a lie, then, in turn, it means that I am not telling the truth, revealing some higher truth. And so, in the end, I am still telling the truth. And again, we find ourselves at the same point, at the beginning of an endless journey through a labyrinth. We are, as if enchanted, stuck in an endless logical cycle, with neither a starting point nor a desired end. Am I right in assuring you that I am lying? Or on the contrary, is my lie merely a veiled truth? It is impossible to determine with certainty whether this statement is true or false. Just allow this paradox to slowly swirl in your mind, like an autumn leaf torn from a branch, and Pachanifshamusa, the will of the wind, without requiring you to find an immediate solution. Feel how it gently lulls you, immersing you in a state of blissful semi-sleep. Level 3. Zeno's Paradox of Achilles and the Tortoise. Envision the legendary warrior Achilles, the swift-footed hero of myths, deciding to measure his strength in a race with a slow, clumsy tortoise. Achilles, being a model of nobility and generosity, gives the tortoise a slight head start in order to somehow equalize their chances. Intuition, that faithful compass in the world of sensations, unmistakably tells us that Achilles will quickly catch up with and overtake his slow opponent. But the ancient Greek philosopher Zeno, like a skilled magician, pulls an unexpected argument out of his sleeve, turning everything upside down. He argues that by the time Achilles reaches the point where the tortoise was originally located, it will have already managed to move forward a little, to crawl some small distance. And while Achilles covers this newly formed segment, the tortoise, despite its slowness, will crawl forward again. It turns out that in order to overtake the tortoise, Achilles needs to overcome an infinite number of segments of the path, each of which will be shorter and shorter than the previous one. But is it possible to overcome infinity? Zeno was convinced that it was an impossible task. He argued that movement is just an illusion, a deception of the senses, that we are, in essence, unable to get from a conditional point A to a conditional point B. Allow this mesmerizing sense of impossibility to carry you away into the boundless ocean of dreams. Feel how the boundaries between space and time gradually dissolve, like ice on a hot summer day. Level 4. The Paradox of Unexpected Execution. This paradox is a cruel but at the same time fascinating game of the mind, like a chess game played by fate itself. Imagine a prisoner languishing in a dark cell awaiting imminent death. He is sentenced to death, and all that remains for him is to wait. The judge, like a cold-blooded grandmaster, announces to him that the execution will take place at noon on one of the days of the following week. But, the judge adds with icy calm in his voice, it will be a complete surprise to the prisoner, a blow out of nowhere. The prisoner, trying to cling to a straw of hope, begins to carefully analyze the situation, like an experienced detective unraveling a complex crime. I cannot be executed on Friday, he reasons to himself, because if I am alive by Thursday evening, then I will know for sure that I will be executed on Friday. And this can no longer be a surprise. It will be predictable and zakономерно. Therefore, Friday is completely excluded from the list of possible dates. But then Thursday can also be crossed out, because by Wednesday evening, I will be absolutely sure that I will be executed on Thursday. Reasoning in this way, I can exclude Wednesday, Tuesday, and even Monday, having discovered, as it seems to him, a logical loophole in the plans of his executioners. The prisoner finds a semblance of confidence and relatively calmly awaits the arrival of the new week, believing that death has passed him by. But on Wednesday morning, when he least expects it, the door of his cell suddenly swings open, and an executioner dressed in all black appears on the threshold. Where did the mistake creep into his reasoning? Why did the seemingly impeccable logic fail him at the most crucial moment? Release the futile attempts to find the elusive answer. Just allow this paradox to sow a slight anxiety in your consciousness, like a night breeze stirring the leaves outside the window. Level 5, the Crocodile Paradox. Imagine a wide, full-flowing river lazily carrying its waters through dense jungles. On the sandy bank of this river, lying in wait for its prey, lurks a cunning and merciless crocodile. One day, taking advantage of the inattention of the parents, the crocodile grabs a small child, and before anyone has time to come to their senses, carries him into the river. The child's father, distraught with grief and fear, begs the crocodile to return his son. The crocodile, smirking, agrees to a deal, like an ingenious demon offering a deal to a mortal. "I will return your child to you," he says, "if you guess what I am going to do. If you guess correctly, I will keep my word and return your son to you. If you make a mistake in your prediction, then I, as befits a predator, will eat him." What answer, like a life preserver, should the desperate father throw in order to save his child from the predator's jaws? Think carefully, because the life of an innocent creature depends on it. If the father says, "You will eat my child," then the crocodile, against his will, falls into an ingeniously set trap. After all, if he was really going to eat the child, then the father guessed correctly, and therefore the crocodile, according to the terms of the deal, is obliged to return the child. But if the crocodile initially planned to return the child to the father, then the father's prediction turns out to be false, and according to the same rules, the crocodile must still return the child. It would seem that whatever answer the father chooses, it should lead to a favorable outcome, to the salvation of a small life. But do not forget that the crocodile, like a cunning tempter, remains the winner in any case, because it is he, and not the father, who sets the rules of this cruel and unfair game. Allow this paradox of choice to slowly lull you to sleep, like a quiet lullaby whispered by a mother to her child. Level 6, the Ship of Theseus Paradox. This paradox forces us to ponder what makes an object itself. Imagine a ship belonging to the hero Theseus. This ship has plowed the seas and oceans for years, experiencing storms and battles. During this time, many of its parts become unusable and are gradually replaced with new ones. First, one board is changed, then another. Then the mast breaks and it is also replaced. The sails are torn and replaced with new ones. Eventually, not a single original detail remains. All parts of the ship have been replaced at some point. Is it still the same ship of Theseus? Or is this already a completely different ship, only assembled from similar parts? And if all the old parts, removed from the ship of Theseus, are collected together and another ship is built from them, which of these two ships is the real ship of Theseus? Which one possesses true identity? Allow these questions of identity to take you to sleep. As the waves crash gently on the shore of your mind, Level 7, the Grandfather Paradox. This paradox, like a cunning labyrinth built of intertwining paths of time, has stirred the minds of scientists and science fiction writers for centuries. It makes us think about the nature of time, about the possibility of changing the past and its consequences for the present and future. Imagine that you have, after years of tireless effort, finally invented a time machine, a device capable of tearing the fabric of space-time. Where would you go? What historical events would you witness? Would you try to change the course of history? Let's assume that your first impulse is to travel back in time to prevent a tragic event in your family's past, an event that has had a profound impact on your life. Let's say you decide to go back to kill your grandfather before he meets your grandmother. It is a drastic measure, but you are convinced that it is the only way to fix the past and improve the future. But what would happen if you succeeded in your plan? If your grandfather dies, then your father will never be born. And if your father is never born, then you will not be born either, and therefore you will not be able to travel back in time and kill your grandfather. It turns out a vicious circle, a logical contradiction that threatens to unravel the very fabric of reality. What will really happen? Will a time paradox arise, creating an alternate timeline? Will the cause and effect relationship be broken, plunging the universe into chaos? Or will you simply cease to exist, erased from the annals of history as if you never were? Allow this complex concept to lull you into the arms of Morpheus. Feel how time loses its linearity, turning into a swirling vortex of possibilities. Level 8, the heap paradox, Sorites. This paradox demonstrates how blurred the boundaries of our definitions can be, how difficult it is to draw a clear line between what is and what is not. Imagine a heap of sand, a seemingly simple and straightforward concept. But how many grains of sand are needed to form a heap? Obviously, one grain of sand is not a heap. It is just a solitary grain lost on the vast expanse of the beach. If we add another grain to it, it still won't be a heap. It will be just 2 grains of sand lying next to each other, but not forming any significant structure. And if we add another one and one more, where do we stop? At some point, the addition of one more grain of sand will transform a non-heap into a heap. But where is this border? Where is the last grain of sand that turns just a pile of sand into a real heap, a recognizable formation? Is there such a point at all? Is there even a clear definition of a heap? Or is it just a subjective concept, depending entirely on our perception, on our individual interpretation of the world around us? Perhaps what seems like a heap to one person will seem like a mere scattering of sand to another. Allow this uncertainty to gently relax you. Feel how the clear contours of things begin to dissolve, merging into a seamless whole, like brushstrokes in an impressionist painting. Level 9, the Omnipotence Paradox. This paradox challenges the very concept of omnipotence, the unlimited power that is often attributed to divine beings, a concept that forms the cornerstone of many religions and philosophical teachings. It forces us to ask ourselves whether absolute power is even logically possible, or whether it inevitably leads to contradictions and limitations. Imagine an omnipotent being, a being capable of anything and everything, a being that can create universes with a single thought and destroy them with a mere whim. Can this being, by virtue of its omnipotence, create a stone so heavy that it cannot lift it? If it can, then this being is no longer truly omnipotent, since it is unable to lift the stone it has created. In this case, it has voluntarily limited its own capabilities, proving that its power is not, in fact, limitless. But if this being cannot create such a stone, then it never was omnipotent in the first place, since there is at least one thing that it cannot do. It turns out that the very concept of omnipotence is logically contradictory, a self-defeating notion. Is the existence of an omnipotent being even possible? Or is it just an unattainable ideal, a figment of our imagination, a reflection of our longing for something greater than ourselves? Allow these profound philosophical questions to soothe your mind, like a gentle melody played on a distant harp. Let them carry you away from the shores of wakefulness to the tranquil depths of slumber. Level 10, the Raven Paradox, Hempel's Paradox. This paradox, also known as Hempel's Paradox or the Paradox of Confirmation, reveals the subtle and often deceptive ways in which our observations can influence our beliefs and lead to unexpected, even counterintuitive conclusions. It demonstrates the complex relationship between evidence, logic, and the formation of knowledge. Imagine the following statement: all ravens are black. This is a simple and seemingly straightforward statement, a generalization based on countless observations of ravens throughout history. Every time we see a black raven, it seems to confirm this statement, strengthening our belief in its truth. We see a raven, it is black. Therefore, the statement is true, and our understanding of the world is reinforced. But now, let's consider the logical equivalent of this statement. All non-black objects are not ravens. This statement is logically equivalent to the original, meaning that if one is true, the other must also be true. But this equivalence leads to a rather strange and unsettling conclusion. Does this mean that observing a red apple, a non-black object, also confirms that all ravens are black? How can an apple lying in the garden, a seemingly unrelated object, tell us something about ravens flying in the sky, soaring through the air? It seems absurd, a violation of our intuition and common sense. Yet, according to the principles of logic, the observation of a red apple does provide some minimal, albeit infinitesimal, support for the hypothesis that all ravens are black. The reasoning is as follows. The red apple is a non-black object, and it is also not a raven. Therefore, it satisfies the condition all non-black objects are not ravens, which is logically equivalent to all ravens are black. This seemingly paradoxical result highlights the limitations of relying solely on observation and induction to form our beliefs. It forces us to question the nature of evidence and the subtle biases that can influence our interpretations of the world. It reminds us that even the most seemingly straightforward observation can lead to unexpected and unsettling conclusions. Allow this strange and unsettling connection to calm you, to soothe your restless mind. Feel how familiar things take on new meaning, revealing hidden layers of complexity and mystery. Let go of the need for certainty and embrace the ambiguity and wonder of the unknown. Sleep well. May your dreams be filled with paradoxes both intriguing and serene.